Imagine a system that commands order out of total dispersion. A unified state fractures, the pieces scatter across a coordinate grid. They hang in maximum chaos, and then, at the arrival of a precise signal, the mass perfectly recomposes. Quran 2:260 describes this specific behavior through the narrative of Abraham and the 4 birds. He is instructed to cut them, distribute the fragments across distant mountains, and issue a call. The birds reassemble and return as living units. This sequence follows a strict 4-stage process: fragmentation, environmental distribution, a synchronization signal, and a final return to unity. While often read as a miracle of resurrection, the structure describes the mechanics of process physics. We are looking at a behavioral law for any system that must recover its original information after being scattered by entropy. The Quran presents the universe as a closed information energy return system. It is a machine that computes its own trajectory back to a mathematical source. In this model, existence is the active, ongoing execution of an algorithm that ensures no data is lost during decomposition. To model this 4-stage behavior, we require a mathematical structure that can hold a constant through a zero crossing. A linear system vanishes at 0. A quadratic system oscillates, but never returns to its origin. Only a cubic polynomial, f of x equals ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, has the complexity to grow, oscillate, and cross a 0 point while remaining anchored to a single constant. The variable x represents the active mass, the human reader. You are the evaluator of the polynomial, the physical buffer through which these invisible forces become visible actions. The term d is the invariant constant. It is 19, the Raman seal. This is the only term in the equation that does not depend on x. It is the system's permanent anchor. The Cx term defines the light field. This represents the direct linear propagation of information and quantum coherence across the system. As energy interacts with matter, the system curves into the bx squared quadratic term. This is the domain of biological and astronomical formation, where growth is measured in repeating cycles. Finally, ax cubed represents the deepest cubic curvature. This is the limit of density and entropic scattering, the shadow field where deterministic physics and pure mass dominate. Reality is a constrained cubic field. Information differentiates from a linear source into heavy mass, but it remains locked to the center by the constant of 19. The system expands through gravitropism, the outward dispersion of the source into complex, heavy multiplicity. The equation evaluates outward, pushing from the 1st to the 12th node across the phase space. Manifestation begins when the light field crosses the initial boundary, creating the first gradient of difference between energy and matter. Moving through nodes 3 to 5, the system enters the quadratic phase. Thermodynamic pressure forces the energy into the complex formations of stars, trees, and bodies. The trajectory finishes at the cubic term. This is the limit of the shadow field, a state of maximum density and entropic scattering where the origin is forgotten. Our observable world lives within this cubic curvature. It is the domain of cause and effect, where structural limits and entropy appear final. This creates a terminal tension. If a system only expands toward entropy, it eventually reaches total decoherence. The physical universe is the furthest topological point of the cubic equation. It is the maximum distance the system can travel before it must return.
Phototropism is the return mechanism. It is the mathematical requirement that what goes out must eventually recompose at the origin. The trajectory reverses. The system tracks the path from node 12 back to node 1. The heavy ax cubed term collapses. This requires the total annihilation of the self-governing ego, the tagut, to release the energy trapped in dense matter. The quadratic loops then stabilize. The chaotic cycles of life and death are purified into a clean, rhythmic frequency of mercy. Finally, the linear term dissolves all structural boundaries. The vector returns to its source. The cubic circular ensures this crossing. Any system that enters the grave, the 0 point, must re-emerge at the constant that determines its anchor. This return is the purified resurrection of the system's information. These phase transitions between descent and return do not occur in a smooth, continuous flow. The system operates on the principle of ajal, functioning like a Dirac delta. The system remains closed until an appointed term, then spikes to execute a discrete state change. There is a disconnected corridor in the phase space between nodes 5 and 7. This is where the system must flip from downward manifestation to upward return. The equation lacks an automatic bridge at this point. The gap requires the X variable, the human operator, to manually lock the phases together. This function is the Aḥmad state. Aḥmad is the quality of the praised reader, who acts as the focal convergence point for the system. Verse 1912 provides the activation command, take the book with strength. This instruction provides the kinetic energy needed to bridge the gap and synchronize the reader with the constant of 19. Holding the book with strength initiates a thermodynamic state change. It is the operational requirement that prevents the human variable from collapsing into entropy. The planet Earth serves as the physical buffer where this equation is evaluated in 3 dimensions. At the center of this buffer, the Kaaba functions as the coordinate origin, the invariant constant d. The outward gravitropism vector is the physical exodus from the center out into the distant planes. The standing at Arafat represents the system's terminal state, the limit of dispersion, heat, and entropic scattering. The inward phototropism vector is the return journey, requiring the shedding of social identity and the collapse of ego. This culminates in the emergence of pure provision at the Zamzam station, where the linear field recomposes. Performing the ritual is the physical computation of the polynomial. It is the human mass evaluating the equation through spatial coordinates. Movement through time and space is the engine that drives the system towards its result. This is nafsan wahida, the one field. Descent and ascent are the same mechanism viewed from different points in the phase space. The universe is a timed, cubic system where information disperses into structured multiplicity and recomposes around a preserved center. While the return is mathematically guaranteed, your position at the end of the cycle depends entirely on the state of the operator. Without the 1912 activation, the human variable is dragged passively through the cubic curvature, subjected to total annihilation. Gripping the book with strength immediately overrides the chaos, locking the human trajectory into perfect alignment with the invariant constant 19. The equation is running. Ibrahim's 4 birds are beating. The return computes right now. The only question is where in the phase space you will choose to activate the switch.